Hi everybody, and thank you for joining us at the Microsoft Power BI UK user group. I'm your host Leon Gordon, and as always, we're back with another fantastic session on learning and coming together as a community to upgrade and improve our Power BI skills. So with that being said, the Q&A is now open. I was just speaking beforehand, before we came live, about the absolute different seasons of weather that we've experienced today. So wherever you are joining us from within the world, please do let us know in the Q&A. And also you can let us know what type of weather you've experienced today, because for myself, we've had sun, hail, snow, and some rain. So a great way to enter into spring. With that being said, today we're going to take a look at the key elements of actionable reporting with Tine Ozimič. And Tine is, after working at one of the biggest European mobile operators for almost a decade, Tine joined Zebra BI team to help develop the product that we all use today. I know that a lot of you will be familiar with Zebra BI as a tool. It's going to be fantastic to see how we can utilize that to have some key elements of actionable reporting today. So without any further ado, I'll hand you over to Tine for his session. Excellent. Hi, Tine. Thank you for joining us.
Okay. Hi, Leon. Thanks for having me on. And of course, hello to everybody joining today's session. As mentioned, the key topic for today will be the key elements of actionable reporting. Now, Leon already did a great job presenting me, so I will not spend too much time here. Maybe I will add a word or two about Zebra BI. Basically, we are a company that is specialized for advanced data visualization in Excel and in Power BI. I'm guessing you already know the tools really well. They are probably the most popular tool in the BI area, and we as well love using them. And with our products, we are addressing or complementing rather the ability to create advanced and actionable visualization within those two tools. Now let's check the agenda for today. The key focus is going to be on actionable reporting. First, I will try to provide a little bit of context by explaining the key concepts and show you some examples of different reports. This part is going to be more like theory-based, whereas in the second part of the session, I will do some hands-on examples in Power BI. And of course, we will conclude the session in a typical fashion with the Q&As at the end. So let's start with the basic concepts. What is reporting? I think this definition below sum it pretty well. So basically, reporting can be defined as a process of using different BI tools to prepare, visualize, and analyze data to find and share insights. In this way, BI reporting helps users to improve decision-making and business performance. This should be like the point of reporting, right? And reporting, or reports and dashboards, if you will, are one of the key elements in the process of, so yeah, the reports and the dashboards are one of the key elements in the process of presenting. So what I was saying is that, yeah, reporting, meaning reports and dashboards, are one of the key elements of the process that is presented on this picture below. If we start on the left, we can see the data. So we all know that the data, amount of data from different sources like source systems, platforms, and devices is just getting bigger and bigger. And I'm sure that a lot of you are dealing with that on a daily level as well. But the real challenge here is getting something useful out of that data. This should be the key. How fast can you get from data to insights and to make data-driven decisions and actions to stay ahead of the competition? But what exactly is that thing that separates a good report from a bad one? I think it's not just a single element. It's a combination of different things like report structure and functionalities that all together will make your report understandable and actionable. So before we continue, let's check a couple of report examples. And what we have on this screen is something what I would call a typical report that we see out there. This is a solid report. It's using a lot of different colors and visuals and so on. But if we look closely, I would argue that there are a couple of things that are a bit problematic here. If we just, for example, focus on the colors for a second, we can see a lot of different colors, but I would argue that they don't have like particular meaning. So for example, on this visual here, with green, California is being presented. On this visual, we have green for furniture, here for the office machines, and below for the sales in general. So there's not a lot of consistency in terms of colors. Then we have, I would say, a bit poor visual selection. So for example, donut charts, speedometers, pie charts, I don't think they are great ways how to present the data, especially if you are having so many categories on a donut chart, like in this example, or then we have the tree maps or the so-called Marimekko charts, which again, I would argue there are better ways how to present information. But enough with the technical details. Let's rather focus on the business side of the report. So for that, we like to do something we call a 4-question insight test. A couple of really basic questions, like, is my sales performance good or bad? How good, how bad is it? What are the reasons for our performance and which actions should we take, should we do about it? These are really simple questions, and end users should be able to answer them when interacting with the report. Now, if I try to answer those questions right here, well, let's try to do that. So I can see, well, this is my sales. It's almost 1.9 million. But what does this number mean? Can I answer those 4 questions? Well, not really. I don't know if this number is good or bad. I don't know if it's 50% above the plan or 20% below the plan. Okay, I don't have any context. I guess this also answers my second question. So how good, how bad are we doing? Again, I cannot answer this. Then, what are the drivers for our performance? Now, again, if we don't even understand whether or not we are performing good or bad, then it's also hard to have discussion about the drivers. But nevertheless, from this dashboard, it's kind of hard to tell, which are the reasons for our performance. And at the end, I guess it goes without saying that if we cannot answer even the 3 really basic questions, then it's also really hard to take meaningful actions. This would be another example. Again, typical dashboard we often see out there. It looks nice, but for example, if I just focus on those top level KPIs, you see those big cards here. My first association is, well, these are probably really important numbers because they are really big. But again, I have the same problem. If I would have to answer, a simple question, how are we doing with those KPIs? Again, it would be really hard to do that. Now, this is a slightly different approach on how information can be presented. So let's have a quick look at this report example as well. And let's repeat the so-called 4-question insight test. Now, if I focus on this dashboard and try to answer a couple of basic questions, like how is my sales doing? If I just have a quick look on the first visual, I can see that, well, we are actually performing below the plan. I notice that because I see the red color, which usually indicates something bad. And I can also see that we are performing 1.1 million below the plan. So we have now 2 very clear and simple answers. So the first 2 questions were answered. Now, if I look more closely on the rest of the report, I can see, for example, on this visual right here, the performance for each month. And since variance is included here, I can immediately understand in which months we are performing good and in which months not so good. And then on the table below, well, here I have a bit more detailed insights into, a specific drivers for this performance. Here, basically, I have much more information. So this table is split by chain and category. In the first column, I can see, so what is the sales of our main categories? And now, since this is organized descendingly, I can see which are the top selling categories. But I think even the more important columns are the next 2. So here again, we have the variance where we can see the performance of each unit. And we can see that in some cases, the performance is slightly above or below the plan. But I guess we all agree this element really stands out. We immediately see that we have a problem in this selected category. So the women's category is performing strongly below the plan. It's almost 700K below the plan. And now if I just continue on the second page, here we have some additional insights. So on the left, you can see the so-called small multiples, where actually for every single category, we have a dedicated chart, which help us understand data even more in details. We can see performance from January to July. Since everything is scaled in the right way, we can compare which units are, let's say, more or less important. And as mentioned on the first page, we can see that women's category is again, performing strongly below the plan. We can also see that we didn't have like one really bad month because I don't know, the stores would be closed or something like that. We can see stable below the plan performance from January to July. And hopefully I was able to demonstrate the difference between first two reports and this one. How much more insights can you get out of the data if it's presented in that way? That would be maybe another quick example where we have, again, a solid dashboard. You can get some insights out of that, but you need to be much more focused. You need to look more closely, and at the end, you might miss something important. While on the other hand, that would be the redesign of exactly the same data set. And here, focus is much more on the key things. Your performance compared to plan, where you are performing good or bad, and so on. And at the end, the point is to take some meaningful actions upon looking at the dashboards like that. So hopefully, I was able to demonstrate, let's call the conceptual difference between like basic reporting approach and actionable reporting. Now let's go a bit more into the details by individually explaining each of the key elements of actionable reporting. And I will start with advanced charts. I guess we all know that charts are one of the key elements of reports. They are great for presenting performance through a certain period of time. But as with other things, we can have like basic charts and a bit more advanced charts. So here we have a couple of examples. If I start with the waterfall chart, I think this is already a much more advanced chart. You can also create some kind of combination charts to provide additional insights into your reports. For example, waterfall are really great for finance, I would say. But the key element that separates basics chart from the advanced one, I would say, is the variance. The variance, if I would have to pick one element, I would choose variance. Because variance is the key component in the sense that it puts your data into the perspective. And the only way to understand the context of your performance is to compare your actual data to your comparison measures. By comparison measures, I'm referring to typical things like plan, forecast, target, or whatever make sense in your case. If you don't have those, let's say, official comparison measures, you can always create your own. For example, like year-over-year comparison, or maybe comparison to previous month, or maybe some kind of a rolling averages, 6 months, 3 months, and so on. But in general, I would really argue that any comparison is much better than no comparison, because only comparison will add the true perspective into your data. So here we have a couple of examples. Some are tables, some are charts, but I guess what all of them have in common is that you can see that variance is somehow integrated into the visualization. And I think this is really the key to successful reporting. Now let me continue with this page. So here we have the next two elements, the small multiples that I've mentioned before, and also the grouped tables with variances. In a way, these two elements are a bit of an upgrade from the previous elements because we're still using kind of the same visuals, the tables and the charts. But in this case, we are adding also additional context to this. So sometimes we want to understand the context also from different angles. And in reporting terminology, this usually means, adding additional dimensions, because this will provide additional insights. So as soon as you add, for example, additional dimensions to the visualizations, in this case, let's say of small multiples, now for every single element, a dedicated chart will be created, meaning you can now create, different elements together and, see the trends individually, or, have top level overview of what is going on with your data. So here we have a couple of examples. I will demonstrate this more in details later on. And then kind of the same goes for the tables with variances. Below, I have an example where I'm using some kind of a different period calculations in my groups. And instead of just one top level insights, now I have more details because I can observe the data on monthly level, year-to-date data, and also on the full year. Of course, I could be adding variety of different dimensions here. But yeah, that's the point. So the different groups are created, and even here you can see that variance is still kind of the key component. Okay, now we have next two elements. These one are a bit more specific. So the first one is the so-called top and bottom M. This is a feature that I will demonstrate later on, but essentially the idea is this is the feature that can help you organize your data in a smarter way. With that feature, you can actually focus on what really matters. So you can focus on best performing units, top selling units, or maybe the worst selling units. Or you can even focus on both, meaning the top and the bottom. These are the so-called outliers detection or outliers analysis. And this one is really powerful if applied on the variance column. Again, I will demonstrate this later on. And then we have the report page tooltips, which I think it's another great tool that can really enhance your reports. Because when we are creating report layouts and so on, there's always a problem with how many space you have at your disposal. And you cannot put too much data, you cannot put you cannot put everything on one page. And tooltips I think are really great because they are super easy to use and yeah, really user friendly. And the most important part, they provide you additional insights into your report. And actually, there's a reason why both of those features are on the same page, because I think they work really great if you put them together. Again, I will demonstrate that in the Power BI later on. Let's continue with the next one, and that would be the KPI presentation. Because the performance of the main KPIs is typically the starting point of a report or a dashboard or data exploration process in general. Yet for some reason, these examples are oftentimes presented with bad reporting and visualization methods. Like, for example, those big numbers that we were looking at the example before at the beginning, that are without any context or comparison. And then we have typically a lot of bad visualizations like, that, I don't know, speedometers maybe, or like donut charts and pie charts. I would argue that there are better ways how to present those KPI numbers. And here I have a couple of examples of that. For that, we just recently created the third visual called the Zebra BI cards. And they can really help you, especially when presenting the most important numbers, which are, the top level KPIs. The next key element are the comments. Comments, I would argue, are a really great tool that can help you get additional message across to the end users. Because, when you are creating reports, you can present the data that are a part of your data model. But not all relevant informations can be stored in the data model. Apart from the numbers, sometimes you have maybe just some specific information that you also want to get across to the end users. Like, for example, let's say I'm store owner and for some reason, due to renovation, my store was closed for 2 weeks of this month. Of course, my performance is going to be really bad. And if top level manager will see this, impression will be we are having big problems in this particular store. But, if I provide additional context, if I write the comment where I'm explaining that, half of the month store was closed and the performance, I don't know, it's only like 30% below the plan, that actually means that we were performing really well in the first part of the month. So this is maybe one example of how you can bring in additional insights to the end users. And this is really powerful. I think the comments should be reserved, not for some kind of descriptive things where you would just, I don't know, just write the number that is already presented on the visual. Comments should be used for things that, are a bit more explorational, explanatory, if you want, to provide again, additional context to the end users. Now, of course, with the dashboards, it makes sense that comments are dynamical, because if they are static, they are not particularly useful, because you just apply a certain filter or selection and the comment no longer makes sense. So the only way that makes sense in the dashboards is to have your comments dynamical. Then we have I think the last element, but is equally important, and that is standardization. So whenever we are presenting informations, I think it's really important that we do it in the standardized way. This is essential, because if you are using different approach every time you are presenting informations, you're not going to convince your end users into message that you are trying to present. Here I have like a couple of examples that don't have a lot to do with business reporting. So you could ask yourself, what does maps, traffic signs, and music sheets have to do with business reporting? And well, my answer would be all three of them are great examples of consistent information design. So for example, if we focus on the maps, you know that, for example, north will always be at the top and the south at the bottom. You know that water will be presented with blue color and so on. The traffic sign, again, the same story. Even, for example, if I would go to UK, I would understand the traffic signs. Why? Well, because of standardization and consistency. So the traffic signs would use the same colors, the same shapes, and they would present the message in the same way. Now, what would be a bad example of standardization, for example, would be if I would have to drive a car in UK, because in my country, we are driving on the right side of the road, and in UK, you are driving on the left side. Okay, so this is just one example where standardization is not in place, and we have a lot of problems because of that. Not to mention, for example, factories that need to create two different cars, basically, because there is not standardization how we should drive on the road. So basically, no standardization means problems. And for some reason, in business reporting, standardization is often not in place. If I would Google, for example, sales dashboard or financial dashboards, I would get something like that. Basically a group of different results with very little consistency or common ground. And that's actually really strange, because business reporting is really important. Now, the good news is that actually there are standards that are addressing this issue. They are called Ibcs Standards, which is short for International Business Communication Standards. And I would definitely advise you to check them out, because this is a set of rules and guidelines how information should be presented in the right way. Now with Zebra BI visuals, this is out of the box, meaning everything you create will be compliant with those standards. But even if you are not using like specific tools for that, following those standards will definitely improve your reports. I would definitely advise you to use them. Okay, now putting all those pieces together, hopefully I was able to present how they can help you achieve understandable and actionable dashboards, which is the key to today's discussion. And at this point, I will stop with the theory, and I will actually jump over to Power BI and show you some hands-on examples. Let me just stop my PowerPoint and open the Power BI. So let me start with first the two basic elements, so the tables and the charts that I mentioned before. I will start with Zebra BI table. So by the way, visuals can simply be imported from the app source, and you can use them in a very similar way as other native visuals. Let's start with the table. First, what I'm going to do here is something really simple. I'm just going to add one dimension and one measure. So let's just click on this visual that is already here. Let's add my business units to the categories, and let's add my AC, which is actual data, to my value placeholder. So now I have a really basic table here where I can see which of my business units are the most selling ones and so on. So now I get some basic amount of information. But as mentioned before, we want to make this more actionable. So for that, I'm gonna add my first comparison measure, plan in this case. So let's just click on the plan measure and add it to the plan placeholder. Now, as soon as I do that, you can see that layout of this visual is now quite more advanced. So I have my plan data here, but then Zebra automatically generated 2 additional columns. So we have the absolute variance compared to plan and relative variance as well. Now, already I have much better understanding what is going on with my data. So for example, I can see that, well, my top selling unit is actually performing below the plan. This is, let's say, a bit of a surprise, but nevertheless, the performance is below the plan. And the same goes for every single element. Now we have much better understanding of our performance. Of course, we are not limited to just one comparison measure, so maybe let's add one additional one. I mentioned before that you can also use things like previous year, so let's add this one as well. And let me expand this a bit. Again, now we have the comparison also for the previous year, and we have now much better understanding of what is going on with our data. Now, there are a couple of different things I can do right here to, let's say, explore this a bit more. I can apply a simple sorting on each column. So now I have my best performing units in terms of variance to plan at the top and worst at the bottom. Of course, I can also switch this around just by clicking on the columns and things like that. You can also change the layout in a really simple way by drag and dropping the columns around. And you can also do some things related to visualization. So maybe first you can rename the column, like let's say I want to name this data plan, I can do that. And then I can also switch between different visualizations. So for example, waterfall chart that I mentioned before, if you want to go with this one, you can simply switch to that in the so-called column manner. And then you can also control how you want to present different columns. Let's say I want to focus more on the actuals. I can go with maybe overlap bar chart here. And again, everything could be adjusted accordingly. And things like scaling, for example, again, applied out of the box. Maybe you also want to add some additional design features. So let's say I want to highlight those columns a bit more. I can just simply apply, for example, simple background color or something like that. Just click save. Let's do the same here. And now we have, let's say, a bit more of a focus on those 2 columns. So different formatting options are also possible here. Maybe one more thing, when creating reports, at least I have these problems. Oftentimes you are facing the challenge to go with more charts or maybe more numerical approach and things like that. And oftentimes you need to create different visuals, maybe even different pages. Now within Zebra BI visuals, you can actually switch between 2 layouts within the same visual. So let's say this one can be used for a bit of a detailed overview, and this one can be more top level with more visualizations. So both options are possible then within the table. Now, let's say I want to make this a bit more interesting by adding additional dimensions to provide additional insights. So for example, as soon as I add additional dimension, we can see that hierarchies are automatically generated here. So I can use expand and collapse to control what to show and what to hide and so on. And maybe just quick demonstration. So if I would now, maybe switch this back to something out of the box. Well, this is all the data that we added here basically. Right, so we have just the actuals, the plan, and the previous year. But from dashboard like that, of course, it's a bit harder to tell what are now the key messages. Let me just switch back to table. So that would be a table in a nutshell. I will show you a couple of more insights later on. For now, let's maybe just remove it for now and continue with the second one. So I mentioned advanced charts before. So I will continue with the second visual, the Zebra BI chart. Let's add this one here and let's build something really simple. So since we are dealing with the charts, which are usually used for some kind of a time analysis and things like that, my dimension this time is going to be time related. So I'm going to add months to my categories, something like that. And now again, let's bring in some data. So as soon as I add my actual values here, I get a simple column chart. Again, now I have basic understanding how my sales is performing through time, but again, I'm missing the context. and we want to provide additional context. So for that, I'm going to do the following. Again, I'm going to add the comparison measure. And as soon as I do that, you can see that now layout of the chart has been upgraded to something a bit more advanced. Once again, maybe let's add also a previous year comparison. Now, all of a sudden, I have a much more advanced chart. Well, basically, I have 4 different charts to be precise. And this now offers me much better understanding of my performance. And now the good news is also the following. As the same as with the tables, even here you can switch between different layouts. Actually, in the background, advanced business charts were already generated and created for you. So basically, all you need to do is just decide which one to use. And let's say we want to go with this one because it offers me the most of insights. So I can see my actual data below. And then, you know, I have dedicated series where I can see how I am performing compared to previous year, to plan, in terms of absolute variance and relative as well. Okay, so this would be the chart. Maybe one more thing here. I haven't mentioned the responsive layout. Again, this I think can be really helpful when designing reports, because if you have bigger visuals, you will get more insights. Like in this case where we have 5 charts. Now, if I start making this one smaller, now the layout will be adjusted accordingly. So when it's smaller, you see now I have only plan comparison. If I make it even smaller, now the absolute variances were transitioned to the columns. And if I make it even smaller, now I have the so-called integrated variance chart. So it's actually really easy to do. You just need to create, you just need to decide how big of a visual do you want to have. Maybe one more thing here. I mentioned the comments. So let me just quickly demonstrate how comments can be like powerful tool when creating the report. Here you can see that we have actually a dedicated placeholder for the comments as well. And from my comments table, I'm just gonna add the comment field and put it right here. Now look what happens on the chart. So as soon as I add a comment, you can now see that we have some kind of a markers on our visual. These are actually the so-called comment markers. And now if I put my mouse here, I can actually see the comment in the tooltip. Okay, so this is a great way how you can bring in additional informations to your end users. Maybe one more thing regarding the comments, there is also an option where you can enable the so-called comment box. And you see now the layout of the report is being adjusted, and you can just simply, let's say, present your trends and at the same time have comments next to the visual, especially for maybe top level reporting. This, I think it's great way how to highlight the key messages that you want to present. And maybe let's bring back the table that we created before. So let me just resize this, and the table should be somewhere here. Let's make it a bit bigger. Now, of course, the interaction between visuals works perfectly fine, the same as we are used to within native Power BI. Let's say I want to focus on a certain element, like, I don't know, smartphones. I can just simply click on this element, and now, of course, the table has been filtered accordingly, meaning with basically just 2 visuals, we have now already, I would say, a great looking report, because we have top level data, we have a bit of more of the details, we have the trends, and we can use the interactivity to do, you know, some kind of analysis with that. Now let's continue with the next element, which were the small multiples. For that, I'm just going to copy paste my chart visual and put it here. Let's remove the comments for now. So let's remove the comments, and let's remove the comment box as well. So I mentioned that small multiples are some kind of an upgrade from the existing chart. What we have here is now great insights into how our sales is doing on a general level. But now let's say we want to go more into the details. For example, let's say we want to analyze this by a certain business unit. For that, we're going to add the business unit dimension to the existing chart. Now, as soon as I do that, you can see that, well, all of a sudden we have a lot of charts. So as mentioned before, now for every single business unit, there's actually a dedicated chart. Now let me expand this across the page. And let me do just one small adjustment. So I will just make my categories a bit narrower, something like that. Let's say this layout makes sense. You see, now we have great presentation of performance of our business units with just a couple of clicks. So straight away, we can see that, we can see which are our top selling business units because the charts are bigger. Again, I'm mentioning scaling once again because this is really important element. Scaling will help you present information in the right way. If the scaling would not be used here, I would get distorted perception of what is important. And one takeaway I can get here is also that, well, basically top 5, top 6 elements are generating most of my sales. And in this case, I can apply a certain element I mentioned before, so the so-called top N functionalities. So let me just go to the settings and apply the top N. So basically, you see now at the bottom, I have a bit of specific group called others. And here, all the elements below were grouped together. So not filtered out, which I think would be a mistake, but rather grouped together. So everything is still there, but you just organize it in a bit of a different way. And you can use the, let's say, arrows to also control what kind of a layout do you want to have. So you just simply click on this, and let's say I want to focus on my top 5 selling units. Now I have my top 5 selling units, and all the others have been grouped together. If I want to observe something more in details, I can just simply click on a certain element, and in the focus mode, I will see more details. So this can also help you if you need additional insight. And all the things I mentioned before, for example, like chart slider, this works perfectly fine also with the small multiplers. Okay, now let's continue with the next element. I think that was grouped table with variances. Again, let me use maybe the table that I already used before. So I'm just going to copy paste it. Again, the same situation. We have our business units here, but let's say we want to now analyze our data from different perspectives. Let's say from the perspective of different KPIs. So for that, I'm going to add Kpi Dimension, this time in the columns. And you see, if I expand this, now I have the so-called groups in my columns as well. So this is now my section for the revenue, and then I have the costs, and then I have, for example, gross margin at the end. So 3 main KPIs are now presented here, okay? Now let me just maybe quickly adjust the layout. Let's say I just want to focus on the absolute variances. So that would be those 2 columns. I will just hide those 2. If I haven't mentioned before, you can also like hide the columns in a really simple way. You can hide it just, from the selected group or from all groups. I'm going to select this one and this one as well. Let's just hide it from all group. And now I have like a great 1-page report for my 3 main KPIs. So we have revenue, cost, and gross profit for each of our business units. Maybe one more thing, something is not okay at this point. If I look closely at my costs, there's actually a bit of a problem in how informations are being presented. So let's focus on this big bar right here. So that would actually mean that our costs are higher than planned. But somehow this is presented with a green color, which should mean something positive. Well, of course, this is not the right presentation because costs are so-called bad KPI, and in this case, we need to invert them. The good news is it's actually really easy to do. So I will just click on the costs, and here I will have the invert option. Now, pay attention on the variance color. Now it has been switched around. And now we have the right presentation of the data, meaning if we are having higher costs, this of course will be presented with red color. Okay, so now let me just demonstrate, for example, if you focus on a baby care and performance compared to plan. So we can see, well, our revenue was actually performing much better than planned. But since, costs were also really, significantly above the plan, our gross margin at the end was, barely positive, okay? And this is maybe an example of how you can combine different KPIs, different perspective to get that top level insights into your data. Okay, so that would be the group table with variances. I mentioned top N, and I also demonstrated on the small multiples. Now, I would say typically top N is more often used also with the tables, because typically you have more elements in the tables. And here I have an example of my sales by countries. Okay, so again, we can see similar situation. We have a couple of big countries at the top that are generating majority of sales, and then a lot of countries below that don't generate much. Again, here I could just simply do the right click on my categories and select the top, bottom, and option. So I will enable top N in this case, and I will go, let's say, with the top 10 elements. I will click OK, and you see now my visual has been adjusted. So again, I have my top 10 elements at the top, and then all the others have been grouped together. And now maybe I can make this much smaller and use the rest of the page for additional insights. So this is one way how you can potentially use the top N. Now let me show you one additional option, which is my favorite. And this one is slightly different. So first, let's remove the top N, and again, maybe let's add additional insights into the data. So let's bring in plan, and now I have something like that. And in this particular case, I want to focus on my absolute variance, so on this one. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna hide the other columns. I'm gonna hide all the other columns and just stay with this one. So this is now my absolute variance. This is already fine, much better than out of the box, because now I can see which country is performing well. But since we have so many elements, maybe I want to just focus on a certain outliers. So for that, I'm going to go with the waterfall chart. I'm going to sort it ascendingly. So you see I have my positive outliers at the top. Then I have a lot of elements that are aligned with plan, and then I have my negative outliers. And now I'm going to do the following. I'm going to do the right click. I'm going to select top, bottom, and option, which will focus just on the outliers. And I'm going to filter this based on, well, I have only one column, so this is the only option. And let's say I want to go with top 10 options. Now you see, maybe add just grand total to this one. Now, this I think is great presentation of the most important information, because now I don't have 50 elements, I just have the most important elements. So the best performing countries, because maybe we want to, I don't know, recreate what is going on there, and the worst performing countries, because obviously we want to take some action there and improve the results. And that would be how top N can really help you with that. And now maybe just one last element, the cards. So let me just quickly demonstrate how cards can benefit you. Again, I'm talking about presenting top level KPIs. So I'm going to add my card visual, and I'm going to add my actual data. Now, the next, what I'm going to do is add my KPI dimension. And as soon as I do that, you can see that now for every KPI, I have now a dedicated card. But again, we are talking about those big numbers without a lot of context. And let's change that. Let's bring in, again, comparison measures. Now, as soon as I do that, you see now I have much better context of what is going on with my KPIs. Perhaps I also want to add some kind of a trend. So I will add my months here, something like that. And maybe let's also add forecast. We haven't used forecast today, and that's previous year. So now I have my main KPIs, but now I have much better understanding how we are performing, okay? Because we have the variance that put numbers into place. Now, as mentioned before, KPIs sometimes are a bit of a different. The gross margin, for example, this one is a percentage. So this one are in millions, but this one is a percentage. So I will need to individually customize this one. Here I can just simply go into the focus mode and switch this one to percentage, something like that. Let's go back. And now, this now makes much more sense. And one more thing, we mentioned before that costs, for example, are bad KPIs. We need to invert them. So I will just click on the cost card and invert them. Now, again, the variance makes sense here. And maybe just one last thing. Let's say we want to show this one as like this. Let's say we want to go with columns for that one. You can simply control how visualization is being treated. And let's do one last thing here. Let's apply the scaling. So revenue, costs, and gross profit, these are, let's say, KPIs of the same nature. That's why it makes sense to maybe apply scaling between them. You can simply do that as well. I will just select this one, scale grouping, select the KPIs that kind of belong together. Close this, and you see now I have scaling in place. So if I look at those two charts, I can immediately see that, well, gross profit is about half of our total revenue. Again, additional insight. If you want to go just with the top numbers, for example, you can also suppress the visualization and just keep the cards, something like that. Okay, so now I've demonstrated individual elements, and now maybe at the last stage, let's bring them all together and let's create the report out of this. So I will just let me just start with the cards. I will just simply copy paste this one to a blank page. Oh, I see I already have something here. Let's remove this for now, and let's build from scratch. So I will just add my cards. Let's say I want to start my report with top level KPIs. So I will make them a bit smaller and put them at the top left corner, something like that. Let's make them a bit smaller. Okay, so these are now my most important KPIs. It makes sense to start report with them. Next, let's bring in the table that we created before. So again, I'm just going to select this table. Let me just check one small setting. This one should be okay. Let's copy paste the table, add it on the page. Let's resize it a bit so that it will fit nicely, something like that. And let's also add the chart. So here we created this one with the comments. Let's just simply copy paste that. So now I'm actually combining different elements of actionable reporting. Oh, this is still the table. Let's copy paste this one. I'm actually combining different elements in order to create like actionable overview page of the report. So here, let me summarize. I have my top level KPIs. I have a table with a little bit of details, but not too much. And I have the trends here. And I think this is like a great way how to start your report with an overview page. Maybe let's add one additional thing here. So I mentioned the tooltips are really important. So I think the default ones are already included, but let's actually include the report page tooltips. So I already have a page for that. And here I've used like a similar approach that I've demonstrated before with the top end. So let me just go back to here. Again, let's select the tooltip. And let's switch from auto to actually this one. Now we included the so-called report page tooltip. And now let's say I want to understand why our speakers are not performing well. I just put my mouse here and you can see, additional insights into the details. Okay, so you just put your mouse here and everything will be presented accordingly. So this is a great way how tooltips can get you additional insights into your information. And maybe one last element I haven't mentioned today, but can also be a great addition is the drill through capabilities. Because typically you start your report with top level numbers, but then you want to go more into the details. Understand what's going on behind it, what are the reasons for a certain performance. Here, drill through can be a really great option. So if I now just click on the gross profit and click on this icon, I already have a report page in place, so I'm just going to click on this one. And you see now I've been navigated to a drill through page that is focused on the customers. And here I can get additional details just for the selected KPIs. And then the report would probably be continued with maybe this page where I have my trends, then with maybe this table for the main KPIs, more in details. And altogether, I think this is now a package where we combine different elements of actionable reporting in one great report. That will enable end users to get answers to their main business questions. Okay, so hopefully I did like a great job in presenting what exactly actionable reporting is. Now, although this is a bit of a new concept, yeah, already a lot of companies, are following in that direction. And besides, creating visuals at Zebra BI, we also like to create a lot of useful context that will help you in the process of creating actionable reports. If you want to, explore this more in details, you can use some of the links presented here, like our website or knowledge base, or maybe different Power BI templates and examples, different webinars, and so on. Okay, so Leon, I think this is that concludes my presentation. So back to you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Tine. Really appreciate it and everything you've been through with us today. Some actually fantastic and insightful information there coming across. So thank you very much for that. Also, just for our community listening in, we have put into the chat now the Q&A, a feedback form. So please do go and give feedback. It helps us to continue to improve these sessions as we continue to move forward with weekly sessions. Now, with that being said, Tine, we do have some questions coming in. The first one is from Fernando. And he asks, in the previous image, you're showing 4 years worth of data. How do the charts work for year-to-date figures?
Okay, thank you, Fernando. So I think one example was the full year. So where was it? I think it was somewhere here. Well, essentially, the idea is the following. A lot of things can be done with simple DAX. Like in this particular case, we are using the following logic. So this is an example where we don't have all the data available. And so we have the month-to-date data, let's say for March, which we are at the moment. The year-to-date would basically be, accumulation of data from January to March, but then we have the full year. And if you look closely, since we don't have actuals for the full year, we are actually comparing plan and forecast. Okay, and you can also see slightly different pattern here, which is an indication that here we are actually comparing forecasts, not actuals. And what this group can tell you is, how did we plan our forecast? Was it like positive correction of the plan? Was it maybe negative correction of the plan? Basically, forecast tells us where we are heading, and this section here shows you just that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And we do have an anonymous question coming in regards to the scaling feature. Now, first and foremost, let me say that the scaling looked absolutely fantastic, and I can obviously see plenty of business applications for that. Now, in the visuals you showed us there, Tine, it was in silo. So there was only Zebra visualizations on the page. Now, how would that interact with potential other custom visuals or stock visuals in terms of the scaling?
It should interact perfectly fine. So let me just demonstrate. Here I have the small multiples, and obviously the scaling is in place. Okay, so we can see that, elements that are bigger are because they are generating more sales. Now, if you look closely, what I'm using at the top is actually some kind of a slicer, and this is actually native Power BI visual. Okay, so this is a slicer. And let's say I just simply switch my year from 2021 to 2020. You can see that the visual, of course, is responding. The numbers have been filtered accordingly. So to summarize, no limitations there. It should work perfectly fine between custom visuals and native visuals.
Excellent, thank you. You did go through quite a few elements of customization, but we do have a question coming in, again, another anonymous question, in terms of the actual colors within the visuals. A lot of them are either gray, a black or green and a red. Is that customizable at all?
Yes, absolutely. You can definitely customize your colors. Let me just demonstrate that on the visual. So if I go into the settings, here is a section called design. So at the moment, I'm using some kind of a style. I can switch between different predefined ones, and of course, I can create the custom one. So let's say we want to go with something less heavy. Let's say we want to go with let's go with blue. You can just simply change the colors, and of course, now everything will be applied here. Maybe one addition here, you can also, of course, import and apply the custom JSON theme where you can specify, among other things, the colors, of course, but you can also customize things like, I don't know, naming of your columns, the font sizes and things like that. So a lot of things can be customized. And of course, if imported via JSON theme, this will be applied across entire report. So that might be also a good option, how to control the design aspect of the reports.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And a personal question from myself. What does the roadmap look like for the Zebra BI tool over the course of the next 6 months and maybe the year?
Okay, that's a great question, Leon. So we try to add as many new and useful features on a regular basis. We do product updates, let's say every 6 weeks, roughly. The key focus for the rest of the year would be the following. A lot of activities are being done on the performance part, so we want to make visuals even faster, even more responsive. We will add some, I think, really awesome UX improvements because we want to make visuals even more intuitive and easy to use and things like that. So this is also one part of additional options. And then, a lot of different things from small multiples, improvements on the tables. Of course, cards have just recently been released, so we have a lot of ideas for new improvements there as well. So at this point, I would, kindly invite you to check the future updates and test the new features on your own.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And am I right in thinking that the Zebra BI is free to try as well? We've put a link to the website within the Q&A, but just to confirm that.
Yes, absolutely. So, well, there are 2 versions of Zebra. One is free, the other one is paid. Of course, with free version, you get, let's say, a limited amount of features, but a lot of things are supported there. So this is also one option how you can test it. And of course, you can download the free trial and test, the full version. I think it's for 30 days. So I think this is more than enough time to test the main features.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. It doesn't appear that we have any more questions coming in, but I have seen that Erska from Zebra BI is within the chat, and she's actually put in a link to your next webinar to look at some of the time intelligence functions. That will be in the next few weeks, so you're all invited to join, so please do try and attend that as well.
Yeah,
excellent.
Great. Thank you.
So Tine, once again, thank you very much for your time and for joining us at the Microsoft Power BI UK user group. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you with us, and hopefully we can have you back again in the future as some more of those roadmap items get completed.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks for having me, Leon, and thank you everybody joining today's session. I'm wishing everybody a pleasant Thursday.
Thank you very much. And once again, thank you everybody for joining us as well. This session has been brought to you in association with Onyx Data. And as always, you could have been anywhere in the world, but you've been here with us at the Microsoft Power BI UK user group. We look forward to seeing you all again soon. Stay safe.